Hi, and welcome to the Prosperous Musician. My name is Spence, and I'm here with a special guest today, and his name is Kristian Lund, and he's a songwriter who's living in Norway. How you doing, Kristian?
I'm very good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, and yeah, just a bit of a backstory, I guess. There's an open mic in Oslo, which has just kind of opened up again after COVID, and I've been a few times now, and a couple of times in its new sort of location. And the last time I went, I saw Kristian get up and play a couple of songs, which I thought were really good, and he was using some really nice chords. And then if that wasn't good enough, he just suddenly invited people to throw genres and titles at him and made up a song on the spot, which is, I think that's pretty impressive to do in any situation. So. Had a little chat with him afterwards, and it turns out he's doing a lot of songwriting, and he's got some great stories, I think. So that's why I asked you on, Kristian. It's great that you can make it, and so I'm assuming you're in Oslo now, or you Oslo?
Yeah, I'm in Youngstorget because I've just been picking up supplies and all that sort of stuff for my music school and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, all right. So I'm just assuming, just from your general appearance, that you're quite a young guy.
Yeah, no, I'm just freshly 21.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you get into music? Because it's clear from what I saw of you playing, you've obviously quite experienced and you've been at it a while. But so how did you get into it?
Yeah, no, I was raised in a like a religious family. Actually, it's like a variant of the Hare Krishna kind of movement. And that meant like lots of singing and lots of music all around. And my dad was a blues musician, and he played in lots of bands growing up. And and ever since I was little, like I wanted to be like my dad, and but not so like him in the sense of playing blues, but just in playing music. And growing up, the bonding time with my dad was either him showing me a bit of guitar, or doing what we'd call like a little musical journey, I guess, where I'd show him a song that I liked, and then he'd kind of show me the DNA of that song. So he'd be like, okay, well, the influences of this band is this, and this. And then he'd show me the live shows of these people, and then he'd explain how everything kind of works. And that's like from a really young age, where I think I was like maybe 4 or 5 when I started doing that kind of stuff. And then as I grew up, I got less and less inclined to like learn because I had a real trained ear. I got less and less inclined to sort of learn the blues because I didn't like the music. And whenever he talked to me about the idea of doing learning theory in that, I was just kind of allergic to it. So my rebellion against learning theory was just learning other instruments. So by the time I was like 12, I could play drums, bass, ukulele, a bit of mandolin, and more like a jack of all trades, master of none kind of situation. And but yeah, that's essentially my background. I was like a religious upbringing with surrounded by with like musical parents, and so I got kind of pushed into the lifestyle like that, but I wouldn't have it any other way, to be honest.
And it was were you brought up in Norway?
No, I was just born here, and then my mother moved over to New Zealand. Well, she moved to a few different places, so then she met a guy, moved to New Zealand, and this was all within like my first year or 2 years of life. And then I just grew up in New Zealand. I lived in New Zealand until I was about 19, I think, and then I moved over here.
Wow. So one of your parents is Norwegian.
Yeah, my biological dad's fully Norwegian, and my mother is 50% Norwegian.
So you're learning. You speak Norwegian, or you're learning?
I would say that I'm like on the edge of being able to say that I'm bilingual, except I wouldn't feel comfortable saying it. Like I can get by in any sort of conversation. If I could never speak English again, I would survive. I'll put it that way. But But yeah, I think that I'm getting close to it. I've been speaking it fairly solidly. Like this year, I've been speaking a lot of Norwegian and getting lots of practice in.
So have you ever written any songs in Norwegian?
I wrote a hook in Norwegian, and then my best friend and sort of star student in songwriting, he corrected the grammar, and then him and a friend of his like wrote the rest of the song. And my sort of input was just like, okay, I don't want that sound of word, like I don't want the O to sound like this. I want something that, like, here's the criteria, write something to that. And so that's the closest I've come to writing in Norwegian. But I am being lined up to do a couple sessions where I will be writing a little bit in Norwegian. But once again, that's going to be with my best friend and star student, where also, because I know the rules of songwriting, I know the sound rules and all that sort of stuff. And it's, when it comes to that kind of knowledge, it doesn't matter what language it is. But when it comes to the grammar and all that sort of stuff and the actual language, then I'm fucking hopeless.
So you talked a little bit about your upbringing, which sounds really quite inspiring to have, your dad talk you through and really sort of give you this kind of really in-depth introduction and breakdown of how music works and how certain songs work and how they're all influenced. I'm sure that's influenced you now in your kind of knowledge of music and how you pass it on. You've been talking a little bit about that, about your inspirations, but what are you kind of what kind of inspires you now to write? Who do you have like something do you have like a particular genre that you want to write in, or do you have like a particular influence?
At the moment, I find the funnest thing to write is rap music, because of the different genres have different sort of tools that they use a lot, and rap uses the widest sort of tool set when it comes to metaphors, and when it comes to the word patterns and all that sort of stuff. It really stimulates me, and I really enjoy writing it. Except when it comes to writing my own music, I feel like the future of pop music is a mixture, is like a sort of callback to new wave, and then new wave and punk, I think, is what people are going to sort of pick up on again. And that's what my projects are kind of focusing on at the moment, is this kind of organic sounding indie rock sound with complex, like, to try to describe the music that I'm making at the moment for myself. It's jazz chords, rock drums with funk bass lines, or like the funk influence bass lines, meaning the complexity of it. And then the vocals are very much inspired by The Cure, The Smiths, the Beatles, and I'm trying to think who else. It's difficult to sort of pull it out at the top of my head, except I'm trying to think of what I'm trying to do is marry the different kinds of live shows that people go to. So people go to like a EDM, go to a festival to listen to EDM because of the feeling that gives you. People go to watch rock because of the feeling that gives you. And then people go to a club to listen to hip hop because of like the bass and all that sort of stuff. So trying to combine those three kind of things, of the EDM having this massive sort of hype up kind of feeling, and like the heavy kick and like the chords that sort of lift you up and create this massive kind of airish kind of feeling. Then the drums of rock being really sort of driving and really powerful. And then the low end of hip hop being that kind of feel it in your chest kind of thing. Because I feel like, given where the musical industry is going at the moment, streaming is not really a realistic way to base your value off of, or like it's not something that you should rely upon for your income. So building your music around the idea of being able to perform it live and create this sort of feeling and sort of environment where people want to go to it no matter what they're into, and like it scratches all the itches, then I feel like that's really where music is headed, or if it's not headed there, it should be headed there.
Well, that's interesting to say that, in terms of obviously with the COVID pandemic and everything, that just live just hasn't been able to happen, and so there's been a lot of emphasis and a lot of people, focusing on getting streams and building up the Spotify. What do you think about this in terms of the one seems to feed the other now? So it's like, yes, I totally agree. Live is where it's at and where it will always be at, even it comes in and out. But it seems now that in order to get live, to get gigs playing original music, then you do need a Spotify following. You need 10,000 streams. You need 1 million streams to even just get heard. Because I've heard that from the horse's mouth directly. Someone saying, you haven't got this amount of streams, so we can't listen. We're not going to even consider you. So how does that?
I think the way that it narrates is when it comes to recording your music, I think that people should be getting trying to get, like, if you look at channels like Rick Beato and these other massive YouTubers that have this sort of this kind of presence, and they're kind of steering the way music is listened to and heard, then a lot of what people are talking about is it feels more organic, or it feels more alive. And there's songs that are in the charts at the moment where people aren't quantizing their drums, and they're not trying to go for the perfect performance. They're trying to go for the performance that feels like a living human. Because so I think that obviously your streams do have a sort of effect on it. And Ed Sheeran is recorded saying, or can be quoted saying, that your album is just a trailer for your live shows. So I don't at all want to come across as belittling the importance of Spotify streams or anything like that. I'm just saying that people should really use it for what it is, and it's essentially a business card or a movie trailer. And like, I think that when you're composing or when you're in the studio or something like that, the idea of maybe leaving out like a little extra layer that is only there when you perform live or something like that, so that there is a reason why, like, somebody will come and watch you live, and they might not even notice the little extra bit that you've added, but the idea of it being that good. And people, if you get a reputation for being good live, then that is what will get you streams. If you do perform, like, I've got a mate, one of my students, he's a busker. He's been busking for like all through Corona time, all through the winter. Like, he just woke up one day and he's like, I just want to busk, and that's what he's lived off of. And so I think that when it comes to saying that live hasn't really been possible, I don't think that that's entirely true. I think in some ways it is, but I think that anybody could go down to Youngstorget or go down to their local sort of town square, set up a drum kit, get like a PA or a battery PA and play, and people would come. I mean, like, sure, the police might come along or something like that. That's where you get like that sort of infamy, and you get that kind of reputation. You'll hear like, there's no news is, oh no, fuck, I'm trying to remember the saying where it's like, all publicity is good publicity, is it? Yeah. It's this
no such
kind
thing
of thing.
as bad publicity.
Yeah, there we are. And so I think that when it comes to like the performing live, you can still do live streams and you can still do all of that. There's this woman called Dana Swarbrick. I think I probably just butchered her last name, except she's a music researcher here in Norway, and she did a study on the difference between how people react to pre-recorded online concerts versus ones that were actually live. And I think it was like a 20% increase in engagement, and it made people like really sort of get more into it when it was this idea of it's something that is happening right now. And so I think that while live as we know it hasn't been available, I think still street performance live or like Instagram Live or whatever is still very much possible. There's studios that are thriving off of that business of opening up their studio, having people come in and record stuff, or like performing and all that kind of stuff. It depends on how you look at it, or how you want to sort of draw the borders on what live is, I think.
Yeah, it's certainly opened up different dimensions of live, and like your friend, I've been busking a long time as well, and that was one thing that kept me going during the COVID. And interestingly, because normally when you're busking, obviously you rely on the fact there's footfall and people out and about, and of course, COVID was really when it first started off, it was really, no one really knew how to deal with it. No one was out, so even you could busk on the street, there was no one there to see. So something that I did was, luckily here there's a lot of apartment buildings, and it was very hot during the beginning of the pandemic. Everyone was out on the balcony, they couldn't go to work, so I just plunked myself in the middle of the courtyard and started playing. Of course, captive audience, they were wanting the distraction, and I did really well with that kind of stuff. So exactly that kind of thing. If you've got that kind of mentality anyway, of like how can I make this work now? How can I zig when everyone else is zagging, and all that kind of stuff. So I totally agree. Street performance will always be there, and like you say, things like Instagram Live, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, all these things, capturing live on like we're doing now, kind of thing. Streaming stuff live, doing that from your bedroom, doing it from a proper sort of studio, making it look like streaming like a concert kind of thing. I mean, all that's happened, all that's kind of accelerated all that stuff. So I think, like you say, now everything's opening back up again, and live is back. Then obviously there's this extra dimension of there's live, and then there'll be recorded live and streamed live, as well as just the going and watching a concert. There'll be all that kind of element to it as well. So I can see, you're keen on performance and stuff, and so when you're performing live, what do you is that something you do, like when you did the kind of let's write a song live kind of thing? Is that something you do at any gig, or is it just because it was like an open mic, you just felt like doing it? Or
it's a thing that I used to do a lot, because when I was 12 to when I was 15, I did quite a bit of busking in my hometown. And I found that if I ever got like a crowd of people, or if I ever got a gig at like a local pub, I found that it was just really like people connected to it, even if the song was real shit. Like just the fact that you made something out of it. Or like I'd have somebody do somebody would request something and I wouldn't know the song, and I was like, well, how about this instead? And then I've had like a few different gimmicks over the years. I had this rap song that I wrote, and then I'd get somebody to come up, and if they put their thumb up, I'd play it faster, and if they put their thumb down, they played it slower. I played it slower. And the idea is that because I practiced it so much, they could keep on going up as long as they want, and I could just keep up and keep on going fast. And just seeing that there's some sort of interaction between the crowd and that, then that's kind of what draws people in. Well, people be like, wait, why is this like kid just pointing upwards, and then like why is the music changing so much? So I think that's like kind of cool, and that worked for a little while until I got tired of it. But the writing a song live, I did it at the jam night because I've kind of wanted to get back into it again, as I'm beginning like a songwriting school and all that kind of thing. The idea of making people more aware of what art is and what it means to be an artist and what it means to be a songwriter, because I feel like there's massive misconceptions as to what it actually means, because everybody has their own definition when I think that there is very much a very fixed definition of what your job is as a songwriter or as an artist. And so trying to build a little bit more awareness as to what art is and what the purpose of, like how much thought goes into everything. I think that's kind of what drove me to start doing, like that's the first time I've done it in maybe like a year or two.
Mm-hmm. So from that, I could see, there's obviously, if you're a songwriter, you can kind of see how you kind of did that. To somebody else who isn't musical, you probably just think it's kind of like alchemy or something. But how do you normally go? Have you got like a pattern of how you normally write a song? If you're in a writing session or a collab session or your studio session, do you just do it like that? Just go, let's improvise and see what happens, or do you have more of a different kind of strategy?
It really depends. I've learned that the best strategy to have, the best strategy is no strategy, in the sense of getting that sort of flexibility. Because if you start off, like I used to start off every song or every writing session with the producer with a drum beat. So I'd start off a drum beat, and then I'd build off of the sort of groove of that and try to find like this space in the music and figure out everything from there. But as soon as I started doing group writing sessions and all that sort of stuff, I realized that that's not really how every producer works. Like some people are more about chords and some people are more about this and that. Like I think that the truest, like the most tried and true method of songwriting is the path of least resistance. So if you walk into a session and you're like, okay, well here's what I do. I do the chords, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then I do this, and then everybody else in the room is like, well, who the fuck made you the boss? It's like, none of us like to do this. Producer doesn't even play chords, because that's the thing now. People just buy Ableton and will just start. But that's a whole nother story. But I think that the most important thing is, like, you knock on a few doors, wait and see which one opens. As soon as one opens, then immediately start knocking on the other doors that are through that one, and just sort of, like, if you can't think of a line, then just write another part of the song, and continually sort of give your brain these sort of little boosts of dopamine that you're kind of looking for. Because as soon as you start working on a problem for too long, it's probably not worth the effort that you are putting into it anyway. And the faster that you get like a full song written down, so like you've got verse, chorus, whatever structure that you've got, the sooner that you've got that whole thing written down, even if it's the most dog shit lyrics that you've ever written, the fact is that you can then look at that song from a better perspective. The exact same way as if you go to buy a house, if the house hasn't got anything in it, you're not going to be able to really envision what's going to go where. But as soon as you put all the furniture in and you start sort of making it look like it's lived in, then you can get better judgments of the house of, okay, this works, this doesn't, and all that kind of stuff. Because like if you look at the processes of Paul McCartney and John Lennon, they would get told a week before the album, they're like, okay, you got a week off of like gigging and that, you're going to write the album, then you're straight into the studio. And they were fine with that, because what they did was they just sit down and write together, write as fast as they could so that they had a full song. Sometimes they'd edit it, sometimes they wouldn't. But the reason why the path of least resistance works really well is because, one, it's tried and true. Like if you have a look at John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, Max Martin, so many incredible songwriters, Ed Sheeran, the list goes on. The idea of being able to get it out real quick allows you to have a better view of it, because if you think about it, like whenever you listen to your favorite artists talk about songwriting, they always say, oh, like this song took me 10 years to write, or it came to me in a dream. Both of them are actually the same story. The thing is that one, it depends where you draw the line of when the song is made. Because if you define the song as being the first draft of that quick little writing thing, then anyone can write a song in 10 seconds or like in 10 minutes. That's 10 seconds is a little bit excessive. But if you count the end of the songwriting process as the end of the editing process, that means it can be 10 years or it can be 6 months of writing. So it's actually the same story, except if you tell it at different points, it has a completely different effect on how people view it. So I think that the most important thing when going into a session is getting a whole sort of idea of the song as quickly as possible. Because then, say it's a 12-hour session, if you've written a whole crap song in the first hour, that gives you 12 hours of editing to be able to go, no, this line could be better, this line could be better. Then like sort of making sure that the production follows the meaning of the song and allows everything to sort of be enforced and communicated. Rather than people being like, okay, so what are we going to write about? And then just spending like so much unnecessary time being like, okay, so what's the vibe in the room? What are we writing about, guys? It's like, well, whoever gets the pen down first, that's what we're writing. And if you don't like it, then we can edit it later. the idea of smashing your head against the wall for no fucking reason. Just it completely eludes me after spending time just being able to enjoy the writing process and actually sort of get into that mindset. And the beauty of working on this sort of flow state kind of writing and being able to get your ideas out real quickly and taking this path of least resistance is you learn what it feels like to write a good line, and you learn what it feels like to write a good sort of melody. And as you do it more and more, it gets harder and harder to miss, because you'll be like, oh fuck, that worked and that worked and that worked. Whereas if you're spending so much time being like trying to write the first line, it's like, okay, I want to write a hit, and you write your first line, you're like, no, that doesn't sound like a hit, and then you scribble it out. And then it's this whole sort of issue of people try to use their left and right side of the brain at the same time, and that just doesn't work. Like, your brain's not designed to do that. It's the left side is the creative side, right side is the editory part, or the sort of regulatory side of it. So if you're immediately going like on off, nothing's gonna happen. But if you go, okay, now it's creative time, write the whole thing, then editing time, and sort of separate those two, that's when you stop having writer's block and you stop having these kind of things. Because that's all that creative block is. It's just this holding, it's the editing of your process before you even had a chance to start the process. I think that's a little bit more of an answer than you asked, than you maybe hoped for, but
no, it's a perfect answer. And I always forget who said this. I think it might have been something like Ernest Hemingway or some kind of writer, but it was they said, you vomit on the page in the morning and then you clean it up in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's a really good one. But that's what Stephen King does as well. It's this idea of he hits 20 pages a day, and that's like, it's mental, the idea of writing that much to, because a songwriter has to be inspired for like 10 minutes. A novelist needs to be inspired for like 3 months. I've interviewed a lady called Grace Askew who's doing great stuff on Instagram. She's been doing like a song a day challenge for 2 years and hasn't missed a day. And I found her very much the same school of thought as yourself. And I've done similar to her, where you just set a timer and just write, and then you can finish a song in 30 minutes. Like you say, as if you're not getting caught up on the, oh, that's not right. Just write it all down. As you said, usually it is pretty cringy a lot of the time. Yeah. Or just lame, but occasionally, like you say, you will get kind of these diamonds that pop up. But then, like you say, afterwards, you've got the structure, and then you can. Some of them are placeholder lyrics, but then some of them you can actually keep and rearrange, and then you can start to mold it, can't you? Once you've got the basic structure. Yeah, well, that kind of harkens back to a George Harrison quote where he says, "Work quickly on the bad ones and work hard on the good ones." Yeah. So it's still the idea of getting this practice. And then, so like, okay, well, I finished the song, or you finish the draft, so the idea is done, and then you can either throw it away or put it in your little safe so that you can look at it with fresh eyes like a year later. But it's very much the same thing.
Well, how do you find the collaborative process then? Because I think you alluded to it a bit at the beginning. But we were kind of talking about then more like writing by yourself and finishing a song. So how would that work? Say you've got two or three you're in the room with two or three other writers, and they've all got different styles and different approaches. How would you kind of approach that kind of scenario?
It's kind of difficult. When I first was working with a publisher, and when I was first doing group writing sessions, or even before I was working with a publisher, I had a couple group writing sessions, and I found it really frustrating because I think the worst part of the songwriting industry is because is all the mystery around it, or mystery that is sort of accidentally made by the artists who are in it. It's like perpetuated by the people by people in it without even realizing. So a lot of the people who start songwriting don't really study it so much, or they don't really kind of look into it. It's just this idea of, oh, you just need to write songs and then you'll be a songwriter. It's like, no, there's a right way to do this. And then meeting with, like, a lot of the times you'll meet with people who haven't sort of tried out all the different things that you have, and And I think that the best thing is, like, the way that I like to enter a session is, depending on the people in it, I like to just try get an idea as quickly as possible. Because if people are sort of floundering around being like, okay, well, what are we going to do then, and all this sort of stuff, and then I'll be like, I need to pop to the toilet, go out, write half a song, and then come out the other thing is like, oh, I had this idea. And then people will be like, well, fuck it, like, at least one of the people in the room are going to be like, well, that's better than this, like smacking our heads against the thing. And so with writing sessions, I think that the best thing is trying to capture people's ideas. So if somebody suggests something, the first thing to do is try to figure out what your role in the room is. So some people might be better at the editory process. So if I write a line and they'll be like, no, I think that could be better. And I was like, okay, well, here's 3 other options. What do you think of that? Like, I think that having sort of more solid roles in the songwriting thing is a lot better, rather than everybody trying to be everything. Because I've been in heaps of sessions, and I've even done it myself, where I've sort of stepped on the producer's toes, or I've stepped on the top liner's toes, or whatever. And so I think sort of trying to figure out what your lane is or what your job is, and if it is a session in which you don't feel like you could sort of get a good song out of it, I think rather than, like, I think sometimes it can be good to persevere with it, but I think that if it is like something that's clearly going to be bad and you're not going to be proud that you have your name on it, just be like, look, I'm really not feeling it, and out of respect for you guys, and for my own feeling, and out of respect for you guys, so that I don't want to taint the sort of vibe that you guys have in the room or what you guys are making, I think that it's best that I sit this one out. So I think that sort of figuring out what your role in the room is, and if that role is out of the room, then sort of go from there. Then once you have figured out your role, try to figure out the best way to make everybody kind of feel like you used their idea. So like if somebody suggests something and it doesn't fit in with the rhyme scheme that you have, or like you're just kind of like, what the fuck? Like, why would you even suggest that as an idea? Always ask people to explain stuff. We'll be like, okay, well, why do you want this? And if people ever complain about what you've written, or if they're ever in opposition to a lyric that you'd written, then always do your best to explain why it is that way. Because when I first went into sessions, I was a bit of a dick, and I just sort of expected people to know it. I was like, "Oh, we're all professionals. You guys should know this stuff." But realizing that it is a creative industry and it's not really standardized as how stuff is done, and even the universities don't really seem to teach actually how it's supposed to be done. It's music school is basically chucking people into a thing and be like, "Hey, write songs every day and pay us." And he's like, "No, you're supposed to be teaching me stuff." He's like, "No, you got to figure it out yourself. Except we're just providing the house in which you're doing it." But anyway, that's a whole other story. But yeah, I didn't really explain myself too much, and it all sort of came to a head when a friend of mine, I went to his publishing thing, and I was just sort of ripping on all the songs. Like, I was like, why would you even write this? Or why, like, I didn't have the best attitude towards it. And then he said, "Oh, okay, well, why are my songs bad?" And then I didn't like explaining myself. I was just like, well, if you just write songs for longer, once you've like put in your 10,000 hours, you'll understand it, and the trial and error. It's like, well, why should I? You've already done that. Why can't you just tell me, and then you've saved me like 8,000 hours or whatever. And I said, well, you're not going to appreciate it the same way if I don't, or if I sort of just hand it to you. Like, you won't have the same sort of value of that skill. And he says, okay, well, you're welcome to feel that way, but I just want to let you know that you don't know what you're doing unless you could teach it to somebody else. And then and I was just like, kind of, fuck you, man. And then I spent like the next 3 months spending hours every day after. So we'd have sessions in the morning, then I'd be about to go off to my like room, and he'd be like, hey, what do you think of this song? And I'd be like, okay, I'll give it like 5 minutes. And then like 7 hours later would be up until 7 a.m. talking about it. And I'd be talking about the DNA, talking about how the word placement is and all that sort of stuff. And he'd present me with like lyric scenarios and that, and how I'd sort of navigate around them. and that sort of made me realize that in order for you to really know why you're making the decisions that you are and really begin to understand your own process, you need to be able to explain it and externalize it to other people. And as a result of that, I've been able to have so much less sort of confrontation in the studio, or sort of frustration, because I've been able to sort of externalize, okay, well, like for example, I was in a session with a producer called Joust. He's this Eurovision guy. He made it real far, I think in 2018 or something. And he's an incredible producer, an awesome guy. And we were writing a song together. And I had a chorus, which was sort of about this girl. Like it's this thing is, no, I'm not okay. I feel so numb. I'm always chasing after what I could be. And darling, I'm sorry for what I've become. The man in the mirror, yeah, I swear he's not me. And I know I said that I was fine, but girl, I lied. Because I didn't want you feeling my pain, so I'll pretend that I'm fine while my heart dies and keep you smiling while I'm fading away. And I was like, this is fucking great. I really like this chorus. And he's like, but that's like really mean. Like that's really sad. And like if I was a woman and this song was about me, I'd be really upset. And I was like, yeah, but what's wrong with that? And he's just like, well, I don't want to make people feel sad. And I thought about it, and he's right. And he's like, also, not to mention, it gives you so many more sort of creative possibilities, and it opens up the doors for people who can relate to it if you make it not about a girl, and just sort of take away the darling and take away the girl, I lied. So I think the girl became, well, I lied. So it's finding these sort of little solutions. And then afterwards, it's still sung exactly the same. It still had the melody that I wanted, still had the sort of message that I wanted, except it was more generalized. And then later on, in that same sort of session, I had like a melody line, and he's like, oh, I don't like that you go to this note. And I was like, okay, well, it's because of the lyric that I'm singing. And I explained the lyric, and I explained the position of the note, of what it sort of makes people feel and all that kind of stuff. And he's like, well, I went from not liking it to now I really love it. And so it kind of works both ways. Of he explained what he was feeling to me, even though I sort of got my like porcupine bristles up as soon as he mentioned it. Except then it's sort of, if everyone in the session is communicating and actually has a reason behind why they're doing stuff, because it sounds cool is not a good fucking reason. Like that, you should never put something in a song because it sounds cool. Everything in music should serve a purpose, and everything should be able to push forward the narrative. At least if you ask me.
So it's almost like pitching, isn't it? It's like pitching your idea. This is why it works. This is why I'm putting this in. This is why I'm saying this at this point. Instead of, like you say, just going, well, I don't know, it just kind of fits. And then it's like, obviously, if you've got a convincing reason why it should be in there, then people go, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right. It's that kind of persuasion as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you mentioned about being in a session and kind of writing. In those scenarios you were just talking about, you're kind of talking like you were kind of more doing the lyrics and the top line, and then somebody else was doing the music, the production. Yeah. So would that be typical, or would you just go, okay, who's doing what? I can do the production on or the lyrics, or do you normally just? I mean, do you write on guitar and piano, or can you write on anything? Is it just like, okay, I'll do the lyrics and the top line, and I can accompany on the guitar, but I can't do all the production stuff?
Yeah. I luckily for me, I can do pretty much anything in the music branch. I've sort of grown up to be a musical prostitute, in the sense of anything musical that pays, then I've either done it or will do it for money. So I can produce, I can play most instruments to the sort of level that you need to songwrite, and then except in a session, unfortunately, it's not really standardized of what should be done. And that's the thing that I'm trying to change eventually, is like I would like to start a music school or music university with a focus on actually how the industry works, and anything that I don't, or that is kind of widely agreed that it shouldn't be that way anymore, then I'd like to train writers to sort of have a standardized thing of, okay, like say, it's like say we both go to this university and we've never met before and we've never been in a session before, and we go into a session where the artist is perhaps like really involved in the creative process without knowing what they're doing, so unknowingly kind of sabotaging their own project. And so we would have learnt, even though we'd never worked together or never met, because we went to the same school, we'd be able to identify, okay, this artist is this type of artist, this is what we need to, here are the different options of what we have, you keep him talking so that we can get as much information out of it and draw our lyrical ideas from his life experience. And then one writes while the other person sort of takes information from them, and then just sort of finding different things like that. And the idea of having the idea of each sort of graduate having a strength that's assigned to them. So like I'm a qualified writer, but my specialty is the editory part of songwriting, or somebody having the specialty of the top line. So it's like different kinds of it's like doctors, really. I think that the medical industry could teach the music industry so much when it comes to sim training and comes to all that kind of stuff. So I think sometimes with writers it is good to sort of be like, okay, well, who wants to do what? But it depends on the experience level of the room and all that kind of stuff. I think sometimes you have to just kind of figure it out yourself, and just kind of figure out what kind of role you're going to take. You don't really need to announce it to anyone. But if you do prefer the editing thing, if you do have crap writers in the room, then just let them do the creative thing of they just like write a whole bunch of stuff, and then you got to be like, okay, well, these puzzle pieces go together, these ones don't, and then you'd be like, oh, here's like an alternative that I've written, and you sing it. And if you do have more training and if you do have more experience, invariably it will sound better. It just then that just comes down to how pig-headed the other people in the room are. But yeah, that's all that I can really say on it.
Mm-hmm. So how did you get into writing, like being in like publisher sessions and recording with, known producers and, working in that kind of realm? How did you first get into that? And you also talked about a school that you're starting as well.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
Yeah. So when it came to, like, I've been teaching songwriting for quite some time. Like since I was about 15, I've had a few students, and I've been like teaching music and all that kind of stuff. I left home when I was 15 or 16, and that's why I started the sort of entrepreneurial thing of like, okay, well, what am I good at? and then kind of went from there. But I've helped people write for a little while, except when it came to actually working with a publisher. It was kind of an accident. I was doing I did a session with a guy called it's not a studio session, but it was like a open stage kind of thing, or like a competition. I forget what it was, with this guy called Thomas von Werden. I probably butchered his last name as well. So they were called the Von Werden sessions, and he was sort of good friends with Oslo Låtskriverforum. And so I played a few of my songs there. The Oslo Låtskriverforum asked if I would like to sort of work or like communicate with them in the future. So I got the phone number of Susanne, who's in charge of all of that. And then one day, like ages later, I think maybe nearly 8 months later, I got a message from Thomas being like, hey, we're going to have the Låtskriverforum is going to have a songwriting camp, and I was wondering if you'd like to come along and be one of the writers. And I said that, and I said like, look, I've got like no money right now, so I can't afford to be able to actually pay for the admission or for the like weekends kind of thing. But if you want, I'll come down and I'll produce for it. So I went down and I produced for like the weekend, working with like 3 different songwriters every day. And that was super fun. It was a really awesome atmosphere, and it was nice to sort of meet some other people that were in the Norwegian sort of songwriting world. And then on the last day, a company called The Woods, so the two of the three owners of a company called The Woods came down to the Oslo Låtskrivare for the final day, and they wanted to listen to the songs that had been done for that weekend. And they were, so it was a guy called Carl Henrik Wall, super awesome guy. He's provided heaps of people with opportunities in the music industry, and is running like a really nice studio up in Rena. And then his co-owner, a guy called Sindre, and who would later on become my best friend, and fucking whole other thing. And so they both came down and they listened to the songs, and they liked what I was doing. And then so they're like, okay, so what have you done for the weekend? We played all the songs that we'd done for the weekend, and then I said, oh, okay, well, what have you guys been doing for the weekend? And then they played this song that they'd been doing that they'd done on contract for this guy who wanted to be in Eurovision. And I was like, okay, well, this is cool. Like, the vocalist is really good, but this is bad English. This is bad English. This is bad English. This doesn't make sense. And I pointed out a whole bunch of stuff. And then Sindre was like, oh, fuck, like, this could be really useful, like a native English speaker, to sort of act as like a sort of a translation layer, so to speak. And then I got like a message like 2 days later saying like, hey, would you like to come down for like a 2 week? Oh no, for like, I think it was like a couple days. He's like, oh, I'm available from this time to this time if you'd like to come down for a few days to our studio, and just to see what we think of you and what you think of us. And I was like, yeah, fuck, I'll take the whole time period. And I think that kind of surprised Carl, because he was like, okay, well, I was expecting like a couple days, but if you'd like to be here for like a week, then you can do that. I was like, yep, there's no way I'm not doing that. So I, once again, still having no money, I made my way down to Lena. I stayed there for like a week, and did a few writing sessions, met the producers there, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed the company and the people there, and they liked me enough to offer me a 3-month internship. And so then I was writing like almost every day for different songs, and like group sessions, single sessions, and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of the three-month internship, we decided to part ways because of different kind of musical directions that we wanted to go. And then after that, I spent like 2 months in my sort of Norwegian hometown of Ringebu with my family and that. And then after a little while, I just sort of decided that I wanted to move to Oslo. And so in January I went and I moved to Oslo, and I sent out a whole bunch of emails to different publishers. Actually, like the day that I was supposed to leave Lena, I sent emails out to Arctic Rights Publishing and out to Stealth Music Publishing. Stealth Music got back to me within like a week, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have a meeting about your music, and so to see if we'd be interested in signing you. Something quite big happened to the company in that meeting, so my music kind of got forgotten. So I ended up submitting my music again a little bit later on, and then they were interested in me, and have had me in a couple of sessions, and I've had the pleasure of working with Ketil and the guys at Stealth Music, and they were really cool and extremely talented songwriters. And then with Arctic Rights, I finally got like an email back from them like months and months later, being like, hey, we like your music, would you like to call us on Zoom? And that's where I got to talk to Odd Jensen, who's like a fucking music legend and incredible drummer, and a really just an all-round cool guy. He set me up with a session with Joachim, who's the Joust Eurovision producer that I mentioned earlier, and then Joust really liked my songwriting, so he recommended me to meet a guy called Chris Medina, who is a well-known sort of American songwriter who's moved to Norway. And so I got to do a session with Chris Medina, and that was super cool. Really awesome, down to earth guy. And then from there, I've just sort of been, I'm being offered more and more work all the time. As either fixing up songs that people have produced and sort of listen to again and be like, oh yeah, no, I'm not sure I want to release this. So I'm doing a little bit of editing work like that, and then I'm focusing on starting up a music school, as you asked about, which is essentially I will teach you anything that you want. At the moment the focus is on songwriting, so it's called Flow State Sound Academy, and the idea of the whole school is teaching music with a focus on musicality instead of musicianship. With musicianship being the idea of playing all the different notes and knowing all your different scales and all that, and then musicality is the concept of knowing when to use those notes and knowing actually how music works as like a whole. Because I think that lots of people coming into music would be a lot more interested in learning their scales if I was like, okay, so today we're going to learn how to communicate the feeling of longing, we'll say, and here's the toolbox to sort of create this feeling in your music. And then that's where you sort of sneak in all the scales and you sneak in all the sort of theory and all that kind of stuff, instead of being like, okay, now we're going to learn Dorian scale. Why are we going to learn it? Because it's theory and you got to do it, and you'll be able to play more songs. And people are like, fuck you, I can already play songs. So it's the idea of approaching songwriting with that sort of mindset, approaching music with that kind of mindset, and meaning the musicality of a musicianship, and then also giving people the tools to write the right way. So based off of techniques used by writers like Stephen King, and a whole bunch of other professional novelists and directors and all that kind of stuff. So like I've done so much research about how to songwrite and looked into how the different disciplines of art do it. So how do painters keep inspired? How do writers keep inspired? So driving from like a wide sort of range of things, and to avoid getting sort of tainted by each person's individuality, I've tried to go with a scientific method of finding commonality between the different processes and going, okay, well, this guy and this guy are really good. They do this and this different, but these two things are the same. So that's what we'll put into it. And it's the idea of teaching the why instead of the what. So if I were to teach you what I was doing, because me and you are completely different people, if you were to do the exact same thing as me, it wouldn't get the same effect. But if I tell you what kind of effect I'm going for, you can then think about yourself as a human being and think of how you would create those emotions in yourself. And the sort of
just stop you there. Sorry, just need to plug in because the battery's going.
Yeah, no worries, man. Yeah, I hope I'm not rambling on too much. It's just
no, this is great. I mean, this is what this is what it's about, and yeah, I mean, you're kind of answering a lot of the questions that I had anyway in what you're saying. So
that's good.
That's cool. And yeah, it's fine. Okay. Again, a lot of the questions I had, you've just kind of covered anyway. So that's good. Okay.
Yeah. No, the sort of, and just to sort of top off that last little point that I was going to say, that the analogy that I like to go for is, say you're a songwriter that I admire and respect and all that sort of stuff, and I want to grow up and write just like you. And I buy your book and I read your book, and it says, okay, the way that I like to write a song is that I'll go out into my cabin in the woods, I'll pick up my 12-string guitar and I'll have a glass of whiskey and then I'll just write. And I think to myself, like, well, I haven't got a cabin in the woods, I don't play guitar, and I don't drink whiskey. So therefore, this like, I guess I'm just doomed to not be a songwriter. Whereas if we break down why you might be doing that, So okay, why are you going out into the woods? It's like, okay, well, it's going into a low stress environment where you feel like you have the freedom to sort of create. Why are you drinking the whiskey? Well, it's to lessen the sort of obsessiveness of the right side of the brain to start correcting what you're writing. So it's this feeling of calm, and it's allows you to sort of be more creative by not actually enhancing the creative side of the brain, but dampening the editing side of the brain. And then why are you playing on your 12-string guitar? Well, that's simply just to be able to get ideas out quickly and be able to have a better idea of how things feel to say or how things feel to sing. So already from that, just by thinking not about what you're doing, but why you're doing it, we've automatically unlocked the same sort of potential that we could have had out of the book. But and I can then create that in my own sort of way, or say that my place is I just like a certain corner of I like to climb onto the roof of my apartment building, and I I like to have a little thumb piano, and then maybe smoke a cigarette to sort of ease my mind and stop myself from editing, or just doing meditation or whatever. But essentially my goal is to teach you not how I write songs, but how you write songs, really.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a cool process you've got there of really sort of, and I consider bringing it back home when you talked about your father kind of sitting you down and talking to you about explaining things to you. It sounds like that's how you then teach other people. It's explaining people's processes and highlighting what they're doing and naming things that can then allow people to access more of their creativity.
Exactly.
Not just like getting hung up on chord structures and things like that, which is what a lot of people tend to do. Right? What's the quick hack to write a song? What's the magic chord, and what's the kind of everyone wants the success, but no one's really interested in the process that it takes to get to the success. And it sounds like that's what you're focusing on, the actual process and why it's important.
Well, that's kind of the thing, is everybody wants to be an artist, but nobody knows what an artist is. Like, for example, like what do you think it means to be an artist? Like, they're not just a songwriting artist, but just an artist in general. Or what is the job of an artist is maybe a better question.
Yeah, I guess the job of an artist is to somehow capture their expression, to connect with, to try and make people feel something, or to try and sort of comment on the human condition, to connect one person to another through a medium, through.
Yeah, and that's a really good. I think that the like a sort of an extension of that is having the mind state, is having being in the headspace of an explorer. So if you think about Christopher Columbus, he's in Great Britain, and in a time where people couldn't really travel around or see the rest of the world, and he goes down to South America and he experiences this whole other world and whole other experience that the people in England never could have, and then he captures people. Like, I'm not going to talk about the ethics of what he did, but he captures the little things. He takes plants, he takes people, he takes like artifacts and that, and he brings it back to a public that never could have seen that otherwise, and they never could have experienced that otherwise. And then the people who have been there before, the people that have been to South America or whatever, they don't have to go back to be able to feel that feeling again, but they can just go to the museum or to the zoo where they've put those sort of different little bits of experience. So I think what it truly means to be an artist is to be an adventurer in human, an adventurer of the what is the best sort of thing? Somebody who makes expeditions into the human experience and goes to the places where people either haven't been or would like to be, I guess. And that's why you have these people, like it's why like a 12-year-old girl or 12-year-old boy really loves love songs, because they haven't really experienced what it's like to have like an actual girlfriend or whatever. but they're able to get some sort of idea of what that feels like through the melody and all that kind of stuff, or through the lyrics or whatever. So it's, yeah, I 100% agree that except I think that a lot of people think what it means to be an artist is like, oh, I just got to create art. It's like, no, that's like, art is just communication. That's all that it is. And as soon as you sort of tap into the music that is the best, or if you ask people about their favorite song, then they're going to go, okay, well, or if they talk about their favorite moments, they're like, oh, I don't know. It just made me feel so good. It made me feel like this thing deep inside me. And he's like, okay, well, let's have a listen to what they were doing. He's like, okay, well, they're using pedal points to sort of create tension. They're using like scales going upwards to sort of create this sort of thing. The melody's going up while the thing's going down, and it creates this sort of juxtaposition of emotions. And it's trying to think of, yeah, the art is just emphasizing, is communicating the beauty or the pain in life in a way that allows people to sort of see it a little bit more clearly, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why, particularly live, isn't it? People really sort of connect to live performances, because not only it's in the moment, but the emotion that can be conveyed in a live concert, a live gig, is kind of visceral, and
yeah,
they're in that state. And that's why, in the kind of commercial sense, you have you're much more likely, as you said, to become a fan of that person, because you kind of then associating, feeling that feeling with that artist, that feeling, that song, that artist can make me feel that feeling, and that's what I want. So I want more of that. That's why I want to listen or buy a record or listen to that again, because it's had an effect on me that time. I want that again, and then, like you say, you associate then different emotions with different artists and different records, and also, of course, different chords and sequences and melodies and everything can all is the kind of tools for that. But that's ultimately, I think, it's ultimately, like you say, finding that emotion which sometimes can't be accessed yourself. And I heard a great thing the other day. You might have heard this. So lyrics make you think thoughts. Music makes you feel feelings. But songs make you feel thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that's why songs are so powerful, and so not just music but songs, lyrics and melody together. It's like they so have such a profound effect on people, because feel your thoughts. It's kind of a real kind of holistic experience.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think the biggest problem that one of the biggest problems that we're facing in the industry at the moment is actually people don't really seem to be looking at a song as a song when it comes to the creative process of it, because the producer wants to make a cool beat, and the lyricist wants to make some cool lyrics, and the top liner wants to make a cool melody for the top line, and then they're just like, okay, let's fucking smash them together, and then we've got like a cool song. It's like, no, like if I put Yesterday over like a trap beat, and then put it with the melody of Hey Ya, those are all like, all of those, like, that's an incredible beat, that's an incredible melody, those are incredible lyrics, but that's not how it works. You need, together you're making a song. So you need to be able to think, the producer needs to be able to listen to the lyrics and go, okay, how can I best service that? And the top liner needs to listen to the lyrics and go, how can I best service that? And everybody needs to be listening to each other and sort of trying to think how to best service that melody, or how to best service the sort of message of the song. Because that's where, if the best music is the music that makes people feel stuff, then why would you not want to maximize the sort of the potential of that? And that's why I love jazz chords, is because I'm able to add that subtlety of, if my lyrics don't make you cry, my vocal melody doesn't. And if my lyrics don't make you cry, the melody will. And if the melody doesn't, then the chords will. And then if you're not going to sort of feel the sort of, it's trying to break down the feeling that I want. Okay, the drums feel like the heartbeat kind of thing, or it feels like something that's kind of reaching towards something. The chords feel like, okay, I'm reaching up towards something, I can't quite reach it, and then I'm sort of falling down again, but I'm going to try again. And it's these sort of ideas of being able to, everyone should be working together and trying to make a good song, rather than being like, okay, I'm a drummer, I need to make a cool beat, I'm a guitarist, I need to make a cool riff, and then everybody's all just playing over each other, and it's just everyone's putting stuff in because it sounds cool, but it's pointless.
I think it's prosody, isn't it, where you the words and the music combine to make the same feeling. So like you say, you're not so you're trying to get a melody and everything's combined together to convey that mood and not have something that's dissonant, so that the prosody is everything coming together to create that kind of that mood. But also, like you say, I think with songwriting, the rules are meant to be broken as well, isn't there? So there's that kind of you can do all that and put all that together, so it should be that, but then deliberately making something dissonant and deliberately making something not flow or out of something, to create something new, to create another feeling is also, if you know the rules, then you can break them. Occasionally you might hit that by accident, but if you're kind of doing that deliberately, then that's, as you said, having the understanding of the structure of music and of songwriting and lyrics and melody, then allows you to sort of do those kind of things deliberately. Much like Radiohead, I suppose, is an example that springs to mind. I mean, they can, they know their way around a song. They can write some great sort of indie rock stuff.
But that's the thing
radio was about, and then they kind of took a hard left into sort of just kind of ambient sort of trippy, but at the same time it was accessible. That stuff was kind of accessible because it was written around melody and repetition still was going on, but it was set in a much more kind of abstract kind of production.
I think that when it comes to I think that the most important thing is when it comes to the rules are meant to be broken, you need to know the rules in order for you to know that you're breaking them, is the first thing. And with Radiohead, I think that it's just like the Beatles, really, where they learned the rules so well that they then began to make music based off of the idea of just communication. So it wasn't at all based, it's not that they were doing weird things musically. When it comes to the artistic side of it, and looking at art as what it is, it's just communication. That allows you to have way less sort of restrictions as to where you can and can't go musically. So like if you look at like Eleanor Rigby, or you think about these sort of more crazy songs, or the more sort of artsy things, or if you listen to like new metal or this kind of stuff, it's the progression of it is like the thing that differentiates the people that are like wannabes in the sort of artistic kind of abstract music, and the ones that are the greats in that is that one is making weird music because it sounds cool, or because they want to be like, oh my god, I just made a song that's in 7/8. Or it's people that are like, okay, well, the seventh, like I'm gonna use 5/4 because that gives you a kind of flying feeling if you accentuate these notes. Like if you listen to a song by Moses Sumney called "Everlasting Sigh," I think that's in 5/4, and the time signatures creates this sort of feeling of flying, and then the sort of he does these kind of these harmonies with microtonal bends that go like a little bit down and then go up again, and all this sort of stuff. It's not that it's weird music, it's just it's derived and led a lot more by the narrative of the song, rather than the idea of fitting it to a natural structure where pop music typically sits. And like a great person to look at for actually thinking about the feeling of time signatures and the sort of environments in which that kind of creates music is to have a listen to Hozier's albums, because you won't notice it. It's like from section to section, he'll be going between like 6/8, 3/4, 4/4, and I think even 5/4 and some other ones. where it's just different sections, where it creates this sort of limping feel or thing, or it creates this kind of tribal feeling, and just really kind of, I feel like that's such a under sort of used aspect of music, where you can really sort of drive home the message of like what your song's about. Like if you think about Hey Ya, I think that's in 7/4 or 7/8, and the whole song is about having a relationship that's sort of like, you think that it's perfect but it's not quite there, or like you're not 100% sure, and the feeling of the 7/8 is that it feels like everything kind of cuts off early, or it depends like where you count it. I think, I'm not sure if it's in 7/8 or what it is. It's the idea of it being in 7/8 rather than 4/4 or 8/8. It can give this sort of feeling of it being incomplete, or if you go into a time signature that's like one more, it's the idea of this something that's going on a little bit longer than it should have, and it creates this kind of discomfort in you, and it's kind of unsettling. And thinking about how you can use all these different tools in your songwriting, I believe is really kind of important. And I think that finding a balance between the communication and between what works from a psychological standpoint, which is why songs have structure in the first place, is because people like repetition, people like to be able to sing along to stuff so that they feel like they're a part of the music. Once you find a kind of good balance between that, then that's where the world is kind of your oyster.
Yeah, it's fascinating stuff. And yeah, I mean, like kind of another layer to that is, I don't know if you've read How Music Works by David Byrne from Talking Heads.
No, I haven't.
It's really interesting to read, but at the beginning of the book, he talks about how the environment affects music. And so for example, like, back in the day when choral music was written in churches, so that the reason why it's all like very sustained notes, because they were playing in a church which has got so much acoustics. If you were playing short choppy rhythms, you just get lost in the blur of kind of ambience. And likewise with like African drumming, drums were meant because there's no house, there's no walls to bounce anything off. So there's you needed something that had a really low bass end, and it could really travel and carry and amplify itself. It's just like that for me, which I hadn't really thought about before. Then sort of added a new layer of like why instruments are the way they are and why they were designed like that, because it was and another fascinating thing was about bird song. We're kind of going off topic a bit here, but he's talking about bird song that each bird song's got a different lives in a separate audio frequency. And this is why animals don't get confused. Different birds don't get confused because they instinctively know their breed of bird goes in the same frequency, and not might sound to our ears the same, but it's not. The kind of poignant thing is that when a bird or any animal that emits noise becomes extinct, that bandwidth stays unoccupied. So another animal won't go into that bandwidth; it just stays vacant as that bird got extinct, or that animal. And I just find that's kind of crazy.
Oh, that kind of reminds me of the there's this whale. It's like supposed to be like the loneliest whale on Earth, because its call is like at like 30 hertz lower than everybody else's. So it keeps on trying to talk to other whales, except they just can't hear him, or like they think he's something else. But that actually the bird song actually kind of brings me on to a topic that I really love. It's once again going into the why versus what kind of talk, because as soon as I looked at why versus what and started applying it to my songwriting, I was able to learn from so many different resources that I never could have otherwise. Like I learned biomimicry in music. The idea of I want to make a drum beat that is like really heavy and powerful sounding, and but what sort of BPM and what sort of how can I find that kind of rhythm? And I thought, oh fuck, what's like really heavy and what moves kind of fast and what's like aggressive? It's like, okay, well, how does a bear run? And trying to think of like the different movements of different animals and trying to think of, okay, well, how would that be in like a melody, or how would that be in a drum beat, and all that kind of stuff. And beginning to sort of think of, because why biomimicry exists in engineering, for example, is that why should we figure out how to make a dam if beavers already figured out how to make dams? So they copy what beavers do, and then they just do that. And it's the idea of, and also because it's primarily built into humans anyway. Like if you think about how somebody's going to move if they're trying to sneak up on somebody, the way that their movements are a lot more fluid, and they're kind of a little bit more shallow, and trying to think of how humans move, how humans talk. Like you should, and beginning to think of, okay, well, why does my lyric sound weird? It's like, okay, well, when you talk, you go down on this part of the word. Like the melody of your speaking voice goes down here, except when you're singing it, it goes up, and that's why it sounds like it's bad English, because you wouldn't go down here. And I remember pointing that out to one of my students. He'd like written this lyric, and I was like, it just sounds bad. Like it's not bad lyrics, except but you need to go down here. He's like, no, I don't want to. And I was like, well, okay, read the lyric out to me. And he read it out. He's like, well, okay, say it now, except notice where you place that note on that part of the word. And he's like, okay. And he listened to it, and he said it says like syllable by syllable, and he's like, fuck, it does go down. And it just blew his mind. And then he started saying all of his other lyrics, and like the idea of saying it and feeling how it feels in your mouth, and how it feels like when you're singing it, and how it feels when you're sort of, so it's just this whole thing.
It has to sound natural. And, and I think that's one song that kind of really crept under the wire with that, which always comes to my mind, is Living on a Prayer with Bon Jovi, when he says she cries in the night, Tommy whispers, and then the next line, baby, it's all good. That's kind of the opposite of whispering.
Yeah.
It's like, but it kind of works.
No, I think that's like a kind of like little joke that you put in for people. And like, because I've got a song where the idea of it was supposed to be like a summer tune, and it's like this really kind of happy kind of production with like all the typical kind of pop stuff, except the lyrics are just depressing as shit. The chorus goes, my heart's on vacation, my smile I am faking, and my friends are not my friends, they're all just hallucinations. These pills that I'm taking, they're all that I've got, because my mind is trying to kill me, and I ain't got the strength to make it stop. Except I've written it to be like a really sort of anthem kind of thing. So it's like, my heart's on vacation, my smile I am faking, and my friends are not my friends, they're all just hallucinations. These pills I am taking, they're all that I've got, because my mind is trying to kill me, and I ain't got the strength to make it stop. Except it's it works because the whole song is about putting on this front, and of like, it's like everything's okay, and then all the lyrics are kind of trying to justify the idea of trying to explain to somebody else why you have a substance abuse issue, while it's framed by this sort of like really happy, everything's okay kind of music, which is kind of what antidepressants are supposed to do anyway. It's to balance out your serotonin levels and dopamine levels and all that. And so I think when it comes to these things that these these creations of cognitive dissonance, which is where you expect one thing and you get another thing, it can create interest and also very much serve the narrative, because when it comes to that living on a prayer thing of what he whispers, it could be that why you're singing it really loud could potentially be because it's like a very strong emotion that this person has, or it's something that's very important to them. So I think that looking at it in a sort of, you can look at it in as many dimensions as you want to.
Yeah, and there's like the magic notes as well, isn't it? Like you were talking about earlier, of like something memorable in a song can be just one note or one.
Yeah.
Like we talk about hooks. Hooks can be like a trill or a riff or something that's kind of a multiple thing, but it can just be the one note. So there was a few other examples, but the one that came to mind is like I think it's Garth Brooks, "Friends in Low Places." I got friends in low places.
Yeah.
But if he'd just gone, "I've got friends in low places," it wouldn't really.
Yeah.
It'd work, but not as low. It just kind of works, that one note. And there's lots of other examples, just like one little note being the hook, or being the thing that kind of that makes the song make sense.
No,
I just
absolutely.
love that kind of stuff.
But
Well, I mean, I think we could talk till literally the cows come home about
definitely
about songs, and that's funny. I don't think I've actually seen any cows in Norway so far.
Really? Okay, you haven't been around too much then, like, because I've been in like these.
I have been out in the country, but I don't remember seeing any cows.
I think it helps that I worked on a farm for a little bit, because then they're bound to be there. Yeah. But thank you very much for having me on. It's been really cool, and it's weird with interviews because I always feel like I should be asking more about you and asking about your process, but I don't know. I'm kind of new to the interview scene.
Oh, this is more of like this is more me finding out about you, so so the emphasis is more about your process, and happy to throw in some of my stuff, but that's where it's coming from. But so generally interviews are more conversational, but I think in this case what I'm trying to do with it is that I'm trying to find out more about you.
Well, so thank you. I appreciate it.
It works. But it'd be great to, obviously we're in the same town, in the same city, so it'd be great to meet up and have more conversations. And it'd be good to write with you as well. I've done co-writing
be fun.
stuff as well, so that'd be interesting to put it all into practice. But so where can we find out more about you, Kristian?
So if you go to, I have an album that I made for fun. With a really good friend of mine back in 2018. Like the rule of the album was that no song was ever going to take more than 10 hours to make. So like the whole process of writing, production, and everything was done in 8 hours. And then the whole idea was basically to put shit on Spotify, but so that people would be able to go, okay, well, do you have stuff on Spotify? Yes, I do. And they're like, okay, well, you got the gig. It's like, well, did you listen to it? No. But it's called musomorphosis. I decided to create a word because I thought, 18-year-old Kristian thought it was very cool to name an album Musomorphosis. That's spelled MUSOMORPHIS, I think, but I'm not sure. It's supposed to be musician and metamorphosis, kind of put together the idea of a musician going from like a baby musician to a butterfly musician. So there's that. If you'd like to listen to stuff that I've made, then there is, if you would like to get songwriting lessons from me or any other kind of music lessons, you can go to Flow State Sound Academy, the Facebook page. You do stuff online. I will also meet you at your house or meet you in a park and do lessons like that. And then I'm trying to think what else. I do have a project called Vaguely Ordinary. It's just a fancy way of saying nothing special, but that's like my baby project. Nothing has been released on that because I need to record it and make sure that everything's perfect. But essentially, you can either find me on Flow State Sound Academy, listen to my album Musomorphosis, or you can or just hit me up on Facebook.
Brilliant. Well, thanks for your time, Kristian. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I've learned so much, and it'd be good to see you around Oslo.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much for taking the time to interview me. But see you, man.